The transgression, the three sleek vessels of the Craven Empire sliced through the darkness of space like predatory sharks hunting in an endless ocean. Their obsidian hulls absorbed light rather than reflecting it, making them nearly invisible. Against the cosmic backdrop, Commander Vexler stood at the helm of the lead ship, his four arms crossed in a gesture of supreme confidence as he gazed at the star charts before him. The border markers of human space floated past them, primitive, beacons that broadcast warnings in multiple languages. Vexler's secondary mouth curved into what his species considered a smile. The Craven had conquered 17 star systems in the past century alone. These humans, with their single pair of arms and fragile bodies, would be child's play. His tactical officer, Sub-Commander Thekros, approached with measured steps. The deck plates vibrated slightly under his considerable weight. The Craven were a species built for war, standing 3 meters tall with exoskeletons that could withstand direct plasma fire. They had evolved on a high-gravity world where only the strongest survived, and that evolutionary pressure had created the perfect warriors. Vexler studied the data streaming across his displays. Human colonies dotted this sector of space, small settlements that appeared to have minimal defenses. Their technology seemed adequate but unremarkable. Fusion reactors, basic shield generators, and projectile weapons that the Craven had abandoned centuries ago as primitive. The commander's assessment was swift and dismissive. These humans were clearly a young species, barely worthy of conquest. The scout fleet continued deeper into human territory, their advanced sensors cataloging everything they encountered. Mining stations carved into asteroids, agricultural domes, on barren moons, and trading posts that served as waypoints for merchant vessels. It all seemed so vulnerable, so exposed. Vexler wondered why the humans hadn't built proper military installations to protect their territory. Thekros brought up holographic displays showing the nearest human colony, a world they called Haven Prime. 20 million souls lived there, spread across 3 continents. The planet had a single orbital defense platform and a handful of patrol ships that looked like they'd been cobbled together from spare parts. The tactical officer's assessment matched his commander's thoughts. This would be the easiest conquest in Craven history. What neither of them noticed was the small drone that had been following them since they crossed the border. It was no bigger than a human fist, painted matte black and equipped with passive sensors that recorded everything while remaining virtually undetectable. The drone transmitted its data in tight beam bursts to relay stations hidden throughout the system, each burst lasting mere nanoseconds. Captain Maria Rodriguez received the intelligence reports aboard the UHS Sentinel, a patrol vessel that appeared on Craven sensors as barely worth mentioning. Her ship looked old and battered, its hull scarred by countless micrometeorite impacts. But appearances, as the Craven would soon learn, could be deceiving. Beneath that weathered exterior lay state-of-the-art stealth systems and weapons that had been specifically designed for scenarios exactly like this one. Rodriguez had been expecting visitors like the Craven for years. Humanity had spread across the stars quickly, perhaps too quickly, and they knew that eventually they would encounter a species that viewed them as prey. The defense protocols that had been put in place were comprehensive and carefully hidden. Every human knew the plan, from the youngest colonist to the most grizzled veteran. The captain opened a channel to Admiral Chen at Strategic Command. The conversation was brief and conducted in code phrases that sounded like routine status reports to anyone who might be listening. But the message was clear. The Craven had taken the bait. It was time to close the trap. Across human space, things began to change. Merchant vessels that had been following predictable trade routes suddenly altered course. Mining operations shut down, and their workers retreated to reinforced shelters. What appeared to be communications satellites repositioned themselves slightly. their true nature still hidden. The humans were preparing for war, but they did it so subtly that Craven sensors detected nothing unusual. Vexler ordered his fleet to approach Haven Prime for a closer examination. He wanted to understand human defensive capabilities before the main invasion fleet arrived. The 3 Craven ships moved in perfect formation, their weapons powered down to avoid appearing hostile. After all, there was no need to spook the prey. Before the hunt began, the first indication that something was wrong came when Rose noticed an anomaly in their navigation systems. The stars weren't quite where they should be. The difference was minuscule, barely worth mentioning, but it was there. He ran diagnostics, assuming it was a sensor malfunction. The equipment checked out perfectly. Rodriguez watched the Craven ships on her tactical display. They were exactly where the humans wanted them to be, deep enough in human space that retreat would be difficult, but not so deep that they'd become suspicious. She sent another coded message, this one to the merchant vessel Aurora's Dream, which was approaching the Craven fleet on what appeared to be a routine cargo run. The Aurora's Dream hailed the Craven ships with friendly greetings, its captain speaking in badly translated Craven that he'd supposedly learned from trade encounters. He offered to share star charts and warn them about navigation hazards in the system. His manner was bumbling and harmless, exactly what the Craven expected from a species they considered inferior. Vexlar ignored the merchant vessel's communications, considering them beneath his attention. He had more important matters to focus on. His sensors had detected an unusual energy signature from Haven Prime's defense platform. It appeared to be experiencing power fluctuations, possibly a malfunction in their reactor systems. This would make the eventual invasion even easier. What the commander didn't realize was that the power fluctuations were deliberate, part of an elaborate deception that had been practiced hundreds of times. Every human installation was playing its part in a carefully choreographed performance designed to lull the Craven into a false sense of security. The trap began to close when the Craven ships passed the 4th planet in the system, a gas giant that humans had named Goliath. Hidden in its radiation-soaked magnetosphere were 12 warships, their systems powered down to minimum levels, their crews waiting in darkness. These weren't the patrol vessels that appeared on Craven sensors. These were ships built in secret shipyards, designed for a single purpose, defending human space against exactly this kind of threat. Admiral Chun watched the tactical situation unfold from his command center, buried deep beneath Luna's surface. Everything was proceeding according to plan. The Craven were showing typical predator behavior, focusing on what they perceived as weak prey while ignoring subtle signs of danger. It was a mistake that would cost them dearly. The first active phase of the human response began when the Aurora's Dream jettisoned what appeared to be routine cargo containers. The Craven sensors dismissed them as debris, probably dumped to make room for more valuable cargo. But each container held specialized electronic warfare equipment that would play a crucial role in what was about to happen. Rodriguez received the final authorization from Admiral Chun. The time for deception was over. She ordered her communications officer to send a single message to the Craven fleet, transmitted on all frequencies in perfect Craven dialect. The message was simple and direct. You have entered human space without permission. You have one opportunity to withdraw. There will be no second warning. Vexler's reaction was predictable. He laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through his bridge. These humans dared to threaten the Craven Empire? His response was swift and arrogant. He ordered his weapons powered to full capacity and demanded the immediate surrender of all human vessels and installations in the system. That was when the lights went out. Every piece of Craven technology suddenly went dark as the electronic warfare systems activated. For 3 seconds, the mighty warships of the Craven Empire were blind, deaf, and helpless. When their systems came back online, The tactical situation had changed dramatically. They were surrounded. Where there had been empty space, dozens of human ships now appeared, their stealth systems deactivated. The merchant vessels had dropped their disguises, revealing military-grade weapons and armor. The defense platform that had seemed to be malfunctioning blazed with energy as its true capabilities were revealed. But most terrifying of all was what had happened to the stars themselves. The navigation anomaly Tech-Rose had detected wasn't a malfunction. The humans had deployed gravitational distortion fields that would make faster-than-light travel impossible. The Craven fleet was trapped in a cage built from the very fabric of space-time itself. Asterisk. The reckoning Vexler's initial shock lasted only moments before his warrior instincts kicked in. The Craven had not become the dominant force in their sector of the galaxy by yielding to surprise or fear. He barked orders to his bridge crew, demanding full tactical assessments and preparing for battle. If these humans wanted a fight, the Craven would show them why their empire had never lost a war. Tech-Rose worked frantically at his station, trying to understand how the humans had hidden so many ships. The sensor data made no sense. These vessels hadn't jumped in from hyperspace. They had been here all along, somehow invisible to Craven technology that could detect a single molecule of unusual matter in the void. His secondary brain, evolved for parallel processing during combat, began calculating firing solutions, while his primary consciousness grappled with the implications. The human ships held their positions, waiting. Rodriguez knew that the next few minutes would determine not just the outcome of this encounter, but the future of humanity's place in the galactic community. The psychological aspect of warfare was something humans understood better than most species. They knew that how they won was just as important as winning itself. Admiral Chan's voice came through the encrypted command channel, calm and measured. All units execute Protocol 7. Show them why humans are the most dangerous species they've never heard of. Protocol 7 was something that had been developed by studying humanity's own history of warfare. It combined elements of psychological operations, tactical deception, and controlled aggression in a way that would be utterly alien to species like the Craven, who viewed war as a simple matter of superior force crushing inferior opponents. First phase began with the Aurora's Dream, still maintaining its disguise as a merchant vessel. Its captain, Commander James Wright, broadcast a message on an open channel. He spoke not in the language of threats or ultimatums, but in the measured tones of someone conducting a business transaction. He offered the Craven terms for their peaceful withdrawal, complete with compensation for their time and fuel expenditure. Vexler's response was predictable. He ordered his weapons to target the insolent merchant vessel. Plasma beams lanced through space, carrying enough energy to vaporize a small moon. They struck the Aurora's Dream dead center, and the ship exploded in a brilliant fireball that briefly outshone the local star. Or at least, that's what appeared to happen. In reality, the explosion was a carefully controlled detonation of the ship's cargo bay, filled with materials designed to create a spectacular but harmless light show. The Aurora's Dream itself had phase-shifted at the last nanosecond, sliding into a parallel dimension where the plasma beams passed harmlessly through the space it had occupied. When the ship reappeared 3 seconds later, completely unharmed, the psychological impact on the Craven crew was profound. They had just witnessed something that violated their understanding of physics. Their weapons, which had never failed them before, were apparently useless against human technology. Wright's voice came through the communication system again, still calm, still reasonable. As I was saying, we're prepared to offer you safe passage out of human space. This offer expires in 60 seconds. Vexler's rage overcame his judgment. He ordered all 3 ships to open fire simultaneously, targeting multiple human vessels. Plasma beams, particle cannons, and antimatter torpedoes filled space with destructive energy. The barrage would have reduced most fleets to cosmic dust, but the humans had been preparing for this moment for decades. Every ship executed a maneuver that military historians would later call the Denver Dance, named after the tactical officer who had developed it. They moved in patterns that seemed random, but were actually precisely calculated to create overlapping fields of defensive fire while minimizing their target profiles. Point defense systems, disguised as communication arrays, came online. They fired streams of hypervelocity projectiles, each no larger than a grain of sand, but accelerated to significant fractions of light speed. These projectiles intercepted the Craven weapons, causing premature detonations that created a spectacular but harmless fireworks display. Meanwhile, the human ships began their counterattack, but not in any way the Craven expected. Instead of massive volleys of destructive weapons, they fired precision strikes at specific systems. A gravitational pulse here disabled a weapon mount. An electromagnetic burst there scrambled a sensor array. It was like watching a master surgeon operate, each cut precise and purposeful. Thekros noticed something troubling in the pattern of human attacks. They weren't trying to destroy the Craven ships. They were systematically dismantling their ability to fight while leaving life support and essential systems intact. It was a level of precision that should have been impossible in the chaos of battle. The sub-commanders' realization came too late. The humans had been mapping every system on the Craven ships since they crossed the border. Those harmless sensor drones had been conducting deep scans, learning the location of every power conduit, every weapon system, every critical component. The humans knew the Craven ships better than their own engineers. Rodriguez decided it was time to reveal another card in humanity's hand. She gave the order, and 12 new contacts appeared on Craven sensors. These weren't ships in any conventional sense. They were massive structures, each one the size of a small moon, that had been hidden in subspace pockets around the system. The amount of energy required to hide objects of that size was staggering. These were the fortress platforms, mobile battle stations that represented the pinnacle of human military engineering. Each one carried enough firepower to sterilize a planet. But more importantly, they carried something else: fabrication facilities that could build new ships and weapons in the middle of battle. As the Craven watched in disbelief, the platforms began producing fighter drones at an astounding rate. Within minutes, thousands of small craft swarmed through space, each one equipped with advanced AI that allowed it to operate independently while coordinating with the others in a hive mind. Configuration. Vexler finally understood the trap he had walked into. This wasn't just a defensive response. This was a demonstration. The humans were showing him, and through him, the entire Craven Empire, exactly what would happen to anyone who entered human space without permission. But the commander was Craven, and the Craven did not surrender. He ordered his ships to form a defensive triangle and prepare for a last stand. They would make the humans pay for every meter of space, even if it cost them their lives. That was when the humans did something unexpected. They stopped firing. Every weapon went silent. Every ship held its position. For 30 seconds, there was absolute stillness in the battlefield. Then Maria Rodriguez appeared on every screen in the Craven fleet. She wasn't wearing military dress, uniform, or sitting in a command chair. She was in what appeared to be a casual dining area, holding a cup of something that steamed gently. Her expression was neither threatening nor afraid. She looked tired, maybe a little sad. "Commander Vexler," she said, speaking perfect Craven without the aid of translators. "You came here looking for prey. You found something else. We humans have a saying, those who live in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. You see, we know what it's like to be the new species, the one everyone else thinks is weak. We've been preparing for visitors like you since we developed faster-than-light travel. She took a sip of her drink before continuing. Here's what's going to happen. Your ships are disabled, but intact. Your crews are alive. We're going to repair your vessels, just enough for you to make it home. You're going to deliver a message to your empire and to every other species that might be watching. The image shifted to show the full human fleet, hundreds of ships that had been hidden throughout the system. But more than that, it showed images from across human space. Massive shipyards producing vessels at incredible rates. Training facilities where millions of humans prepared for war. Research stations developing weapons that bent the laws of physics. The message is simple, Rodriguez continued. Humans want peace. We want to trade, to learn, to grow alongside other species. But anyone who enters our space without permission, anyone who threatens our people, will discover that we are not prey. We are the species that survived ice ages, plagues, and world wars. We are the species that turned nuclear weapons into power sources and made homes in the void between stars. She set down her cup and leaned forward slightly. We are offering you something no human enemy has ever received. Mercy. Take it. Go home. Tell your empire that human space is off limits unless you come in peace, because next time we won't be so generous. The transmission ended, and the gravitational distortion. Fields dropped. The path home was open. Repair drones launched from the human ships, beginning work on the Craven vessel's engines and navigation systems. No human set foot on the alien ships. The drones did their work efficiently and withdrew. Vexlar stood on his bridge, surrounded by his defeated crew, wrestling with emotions his species rarely experienced. Humiliation, certainly, but also something else. Respect, perhaps even fear. The humans had defeated them without killing a single Craven. They had demonstrated overwhelming superiority and then chosen mercy. Asterisk. As the Craven ships limped away from human space, Fekros approached his commander with a final report. The humans had left something in their computer systems. Not a virus or tracking program, but a complete database of human history. Wars. Yes, but also art, music, literature, and philosophy. The story of a species that had learned to temper strength with wisdom. The journey back to Craven space took 3 weeks. During that time, Vexler studied the human database obsessively. He learned about their wars, from primitive conflicts with sticks and stones to nuclear exchanges that had nearly ended their civilization. But more importantly, he learned about what came after, how they had pulled back from the brink, united as a species, and reached for the stars, not as conquerors, but as explorers. When the battered fleet finally reached Craven space, they were met by the entire Imperial Navy, ready to launch a retaliatory strike against the humans. Vexler stood before the War Council and delivered his report. He told them about the human weapons, their tactics, their overwhelming technological superiority. But he also told them about their mercy. The council was divided. Some wanted immediate revenge for this humiliation. Others, the wiser ones, understood the message the humans had sent. The debate raged for days before the Emperor himself intervened. The decree was simple. Human space was forbidden. No Craven vessel would cross their borders without explicit invitation. Trade would be permitted at designated neutral zones, but any act of aggression against humanity would be considered treason against the Empire. Word spread quickly through the galactic community. The mysterious humans, who had seemed so weak and vulnerable, had defeated a Craven invasion fleet without losing a single ship or life. More incredibly, they had allowed their enemies to leave with a warning instead of destruction. Some species saw this as weakness, but they were quickly corrected by those who understood military strategy. The humans had revealed only a fraction of their capabilities, just enough to make their point. The true extent of their power remained a mystery, and that uncertainty was more effective than any display of force. In the following years, human space became known throughout the galaxy as the Silent Sector. Ships that entered with peaceful intentions were welcomed, traded with, and sent on their way with gifts and knowledge. But the few who entered with hostile intent were never heard from again, not because they were destroyed, but because the survivors were too terrified to speak of what they had witnessed. Admiral Chun retired shortly after the Craven incident, but not before establishing the doctrine that would guide human military policy for generations. "We are gardeners," he wrote in his final report, "tending the garden of peace with tools that could burn the universe. We choose growth over destruction, but let none mistake our choice for weakness." Maria Rodriguez continued to patrol the borders, her ship still disguised as a barely functional patrol vessel. She liked to think that somewhere out there, Vexler was telling other species about their encounter, about the humans who had every reason to destroy him, but chose instead to teach him a lesson about strength and mercy. The galaxy had learned something important that day. Humans were not the weak newcomers they appeared to be. They were something far more dangerous, a species that had looked into the abyss of their own destructive potential and chosen to be better. They were proof that true strength wasn't about the ability to destroy, but about the wisdom to know when not to. And so the message spread through the cosmos, whispered in 100 languages across 1,000 worlds. No one enters human space uninvited and returns alive to tell the tale. Not because the humans kill them, but because they show them something that changes them forever. They show them what it means to be truly powerful and choose peace anyway. The few who tested this warning discovered that the humans had not been bluffing. Their technology continued to advance at a frightening pace, always defensive in nature, but capable of offensive applications that defied comprehension. They became the galaxy's reluctant peacekeepers, not through conquest, but through the simple fact that no one dared to provoke them. Years turned to decades, and the story of the Craven fleet became legend. Some species claimed it was propaganda, that no one could be as powerful as the stories suggested. These skeptics were free to test the truth for themselves, though none who did ever return to report their findings. Human space remained inviolate, a testament to a simple truth that echoed through the cosmos. Respect is earned not through aggression, but through the strength to show mercy when holding all the cards. And in the vast darkness between the stars, that lesson continued to spread, one species at a time, ensuring that humanity's borders remained secure, not through fear alone, but through a complex mixture of respect, uncertainty, and the knowledge that the humans were always watching, always ready, and always willing to teach the same lesson to anyone who needed to learn it. The universe had discovered that humans were not just another species among many. They were the guardians at the gate, the ones who said, "This far and no further," and had the power to enforce it. And perhaps most remarkably of all, they did it, not with cruelty or tyranny, but with a firm hand extended in friendship to those who approached in peace, and an iron fist hidden in a velvet glove for those who did not. This was the legacy of the day the Craven crossed into human space without permission. Not a tale of destruction and conquest, but a story of wisdom and restraint. A reminder that true power lies not in the ability to destroy, but in the choice not to. And in the endless expanse of space, that choice continued to echo, a warning and a promise combined. Enter human space in peace and find friends. Enter with hostile intent and discover why no one ever does it twice. Asterisk